Thank you, Ves. I know engineering has a governing faculty meeting. Some of the faculty may join a little late, but with that, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Armin Zakarian. I'm the Vice Provost for Research at UM-Dearborn, and I want to welcome you to our fourth and last UM-Dearborn, UM-Flint collaborative research series event. So these events have been real success. We had really good faculty participation, and we had some excellent presentations. We learned a lot about this to what our colleagues, both in Flint and Dearborn, are working on, and it's really very exciting. And for participants, thank you for taking time this afternoon to join us for the event, which is dedicated to social justice and community engagement. This afternoon, we have 8 excellent faculty speakers who will share briefly with you about the research that they are working on. And I'm sure we're going to hear some excited work that they are doing. A few other people I want to thank. Obviously, I want to extend my gratitude to 2 chancellors, Chancellor Dada and Chancellor Grasso, for providing support for this initiative. And hopefully we'll see some very good research collaboration coming out of this work. Finally, I want to express my gratitude to folks who have been working really hard for organizing this event, both on Dearborn and on the Flint campus. So that's the Office of Research at Dearborn and Office of Research and Economic Development at UM-Flint. The UM-Dearborn and Flint, UM-Flint Collaborative Research Grants Program has been accepted the application since January. And anyone interested can submit an application via InfoReady anytime and immediately after today's event if you identify a partner and have an idea want to pursue. The submission deadline is April 25th, 5 p.m. And we want to emphasize that this program is open to collaborative teams of researchers from both campuses. So at least 1 PI from each of the 2 campuses should be involved. So the areas of interest are broad, so not limited to some of the topics that we have discussed in last 3, including today's event. So any idea is welcome as long as you have collaborators from both campuses participating. Our hope is that today's event will provide the attendees with the opportunity to learn about the research of their colleagues and possibly help find cross-campus collaborators for the application for the program. So 8 lightning talks will be followed by breakout sessions like in the previous events, when all attendees will be sent into breakout rooms and will have an opportunity to discuss research ideas with colleagues from both campuses. Again, the lightning talks will be recorded, the breakout rooms will not. So at 1:30 p.m., all sessions will end without bringing the participants back to the main meeting room. Our hope is that the conversations that start in these breakout rooms will continue afterwards. You can get hold of each other and continue that conversation. To support post-event contacts and conversations, the Office of Research created a research profile directory, a place with brief research profiles for faculty interested in finding a collaborator for the joint grant program. A link to the directory will be shared in the chat. Check out who is listed there, and if you want to add your profile to this list, please contact in the email. Contact email also will be posted in the chat room. So with that, we want to move to our presenters. As I mentioned, we have 8 excellent presenters this afternoon. Our first presenter is Professor Sally Howell. Sally is an associate professor of history. She's also director of the Center of Arab American Studies. Sally, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I thank you, Armin, and Vess as well for organizing this event. I think it's really exciting. I look forward to hearing about everyone's work. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, sorry. All right, so the project I'm talking about is a research collaboration that started with research I was doing in Detroit, looking at the history of Muslim community development across the city and even in the suburban spaces, looking at how Muslims were sort of transforming the city. It seemed to be I mean, I could see that they were changing the economy in certain parts of the city and really creating growth and lots of opportunity in neighborhoods where they were building mosques and investing in the urban infrastructure. And as I started working on this project, I'm actually going to play a video really quickly that tells the story of how the project evolved. And then I'll come back in and talk about the collaboration.
Hello, Metropolis is a series of exhibitions that we created that looks at the visibility and in some sense the invisibility of the Muslim population in Southeast Michigan. The project sort of came about with Sally Howell approaching me after she saw one of my shows in Hamtramck. And we were both sort of looking at this sort of issue where the Muslim population is very kind of visible, they're here, present, there's a big population, but in the narrative, in the Detroit narrative, they're sort of lost.
The Muslim community has been a part of the Detroit narrative for over a century now. When we're talking about the Halal Metropolis, we're talking about this space that Muslims are producing socially and culturally and politically and historically, but it's not something they're producing in a vacuum. They're producing it in relation with everyone else who lives in Michigan. And I started to think about the whole metro area as a Halal Metropolis, not just these spaces around mosques.
Often stories about Muslims in America in general are not very nuanced. Muslims are presented as monolithic, as single-minded. So one of the things that we wanted to show, and we want people to really take away, is how diverse this community is, how multi-ethnic and multicultural it is, how spread out it is, and how the contributions of the American Muslim community have spread out across different sectors and different regions. Muslims are inextricable from the American cultural fabric and from American history. Without telling this part of the story, the history of the United States and the future of the United States is incomplete. And therefore, that leaves us with an incomplete image and an incomplete understanding of who we are as a people.
We think of the Muslim community as being ghettoized or being separate from everyone else or being different from everyone else. And what we're trying to say is they are us and we are them. And it's a lot more fun and interesting if we engage each other.
Hello, Metropolis is a series of exhibitions that we created that looks at the visibility.
All right, now how do I advance my slides? That's a little problem I'm having. Here we go. Okay, so yes, this was a highly collaborative team project that we worked on, and it went really quickly from being a project based on research, which I was engaged in looking at the history, to collaborating with these partners, a documentarian, a photographer and videographer, and an artist. And then we have a team of production people who climbed on board. But it wound up being a really highly engaged project. We did 6 gallery installations in 6 different places across the metro region. In each place, we told the history of that specific Muslim community. And we highlighted in the installation in those spaces, we highlighted several themes that were seemed to be the really sort of the things that drove Muslim visibility in those spaces. And so we had a series of of exhibits. We did these gallery talks each time the installation was installed, where we included community activists, people from community-based organizations, artists, cultural influencers to join us and have this conversation about the work they're doing and about how it contributes to Muslim visibility. We also, during the pandemic, the project sort of got shut down, obviously. And so we spent, I mean, I can just, click on this and show you, we started interviewing community-based organizers and leaders. And in the end, we conducted over 150 interviews with Muslim American leaders about a whole variety of topics that were relevant to their populations and the work they were doing. Anyway, so it was a highly collaborative project. It was a really fun, engaging project for us to work on. And I'm really eager to hear about your projects and to find out about new collaborations I can participate in. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. That was very informative, really interesting work. We'll move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Biggie Larson. She's an associate professor of English from University of Michigan, Flint. Becky, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sally, I'm crushing on your project, and I'm so excited that you're here because I've been watching Halal Metropolis and like thinking of it as a kind of model for what I'm doing in this project. So let me see if I can get the right screen to show up. Okay, so I'm Biggie Larson at the UM-Flint, and this is the Flint Neighborhood History Project. The Flint Neighborhood History Project is an urban memory project that studies the culture of Flint, Michigan's original Black neighborhoods. These neighborhoods segregated by federal redlining policies, primarily two neighborhoods, segregated by federal redlining policies beginning in the 1930s and destroyed by urban renewal projects in the 1970s. The neighborhoods that I'm looking at, you can see in the redlining map here, they run from to the north in a sort of narrow pink strip is one of them. And then there's just in the center, I guess I can use my cursor, right? I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes,
right
can.
There. You can? Okay, so right there, there's this is neighborhood D18, in which I've done a lot of work. Sometimes it's called Floral Park. Sometimes it's called the South Side, depends who you're talking to, but it's right there. These were redline neighborhoods in the 30s. They were both destroyed in the 1970s for a freeway project. But the social and cultural networks that were created in those neighborhoods continue, and they survive and they thrive in the social and cultural connections between displaced residents. Members of the project team work with former residents of these neighborhoods to gather, organize, catalog, and preserve materials in community-based physical archives. We also digitize portions of the collections, and we record residents' memories of their neighborhoods in audio and video oral histories. All of these digitized or born digital files are being prepared for long-term preservation and for use by researchers and the public in a set of web-based resources. Each member of the project team has their own reason to engage in this work. For my part, I'm interested in the narrative aspects of personal and communal memory and received historical narratives. The university's partners in this project include a collection of Flint organizations and individuals. The Sloan Museum of Discovery gives us a public exhibit space. The Neighborhood Engagement Hub brings people together around their neighborhood identity. The Community Foundation of Greater Flint, Sylvester Broom Empowerment Village brings youth into the project, churches, neighborhood groups, and individual residents. Each of these organizations and people plays an essential role in a set of related activities. The University of Michigan members of the team, which include myself, a GIS specialist on the Flint campus, and the Digital Scholarship Service team, which is on the Ann Arbor campus. For us, this is a public humanities project and a digital humanities project. Digital humanities research takes up traditional humanities objects of study, the human cultural record. But it works with both traditional and emerging digital elements in that record, things like digital editions of texts, image, video, and audio files. What you see on this screen is the text right there is a digital image of an original manuscript of an invocation that was delivered at the Highway Commission luncheon in 1958. It was delivered by a Black religious leader whose church would then be demolished by that project in '71. And the house photo there is a set of structure photos that we're digitizing from a 35mm film that is housed in a local archive. And then the video there is a set of short documentary or pulled from oral history footage that we're creating on specific subjects. So those are the kinds of materials that we're working with. So digital humanities the work is largely experimental and developing, and it can include encoding and computational processing, but this project is curation and visualization. So members of the team are collecting these things and curating them for exhibition in new and different ways, something like Halal Metropolis is doing as well. Okay, so the basic unit of work for digital humanists, which you've probably noticed, is the project. You don't ask a digital humanist what they're working on, but to tell you about their project. These projects now are broadly available to the public, and they shape themselves for both academic and public use. I've developed a whole new set of skills to allow me to work with digital media, manage humanities data, and develop digital platforms as a mode of publication, rather than just writing articles for academic journals. We're preparing cultural heritage materials for two types of visualization platforms. The first is an exhibition platform called Omeka, in which we can create a database of files attached to structured metadata, which allows the files to be filtered or searched by users, but also to be embedded into multimedia digital exhibitions, where they're displayed alongside writing about the thematic or historical subjects that they address. Once a collection of multimedia files have been archived in Omeka, scholars on the project and their students can research and write about this history and embed pieces of the collection into their written web pages. Because this history emerges from neighborhood spaces, it may come as a little surprise that the second mode of visualization we're using for these materials is geospatial. This is a map of Flint. You'll recognize it. The freeway interchange that covers over the neighborhood of residents that I'm working with is in the center. You can see it redlined there, as it was redlined, and it's right there where the interchange is. That was the community. And so let me zoom into it right here. So we can embed data files into an ArcGIS base map that allows us to see how residents' memories of their neighborhood reshape the neighborhoods themselves. Like all DH projects, this one has benefited from contributions from a series of community and university experts. In 2019, Dan Treppel from Michigan Tech developed a set of base maps of these neighborhoods, and this is one of them, geo-rectifying historical maps and aerial photos. He created tools like this slider map that allows us to easily visualize what was lost in the construction of the I-69-475 freeway project. He created an entire set of maps that we can now bring to life with multimedia storytelling. I'll show you how this slider works. You can see in this image the freeway, and as I move this slider, you can see what was here in the 1950s. This is 1954. I'm doing this with my little trackpad. So there's this neighborhood that lies underneath this freeway interchange. And this was, as you might expect, Flint's most affluent Black neighborhood in 1970 when it was destroyed, complete with Black businesses, a commercial district, schools. It was segregated under redlining, but it had this whole very joyful kind of culture, 7 jazz clubs, all the kinds of things that people talk very excitedly about when I talk to them. This website is available to the public already. If you want to take a look, I can give you a link. In graduate school, I was trained to work alone on individual texts and authors and to write for other researchers. The Flint Neighborhood History Project is the work I've been compelled to do by the community in which I found myself, and it has required me to rethink my methods and my role in the work. I've learned to clean and manage humanities data, to understand its intellectual property issues, to develop a metadata structure that will communicate across visualization platforms, and to consider academic and public users, and to design for broad accessibility. Even so, one person cannot contain or learn all of the expertise required to make projects like this one work. Collaboration is essential and difficult, but has been very rewarding, and it has allowed me to do something of value for and with a team of interesting and inspiring people, which I hope to continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. That was very interesting, and I'm hoping that you'll find time to talk to Sally about possible collaboration. I think there's a lot in common that you have, and quite interesting. Thank you. We'll move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter, Krista Saber. Krista is an assistant professor of philosophy at University of Michigan Dearborn. Her research focuses on applied ethics, medical humanities, philosophy of science and technology, and philosophy of medicine. Krista, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Armin and Wes, for the invitation to talk here today. And I think I'm going to continue in this theme of what a person trained in the humanities can discover through working in collaboration with others. I'm not sure if you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right. So, like Armin said, my name is Krista Saber. I specialize in the philosophy of science and technology, and also in ethics, which means normative theory, as well as applied ethics, medical ethics, environmental ethics, the ethics of technology. And within the philosophy of science, I like to focus on the philosophy of medicine. I'm really interested in the philosophy of mental illness, but I also do research on the status of the human body, the ways in which scientists take it as an object of inquiry, and how these protocols impact the lived experience of illness or health. But what I'm here to talk about today is not so much my own research, but about how my research has become part of this multidisciplinary collaboration, which spans quite a surprising range of disciplinary fields. We call ourselves the Public Trust in Science and Technology Group. We've been organized and facilitated by the Office of Research here at the University of Michigan Dearborn. And here's a slide which lists all of the members of the team. And it also features a diagram visualizing the connections among our discipline-specific expertise. That's right, we've actually got a logo for our project. So you may recall from about a minute ago that one of my fields of specialization is ethics. And indeed, there is an ethics to engaging in a research collaboration. In fact, philosophers of science are increasingly interested in what makes multidisciplinary research successful, about the type of epistemic virtues and indeed human virtues needed to build a productive research team. And I think that this type of knowledge is highly relevant to how one goes about engaging with community partners, to how one allows community partners to be actual partners in one's research, with all of the ethical connotations of that word, the word partnership. So the ultimate goal of our group is to develop public service technologies to mitigate the impact of misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, using a machine learning model for understanding why social media is capable of undermining trust in digitally connected communities, why increased social media use, for example, leads to increased polarization. Our community partners for this project are local faith communities. At this stage of our project, Islamic faith communities. We would like them to use a platform designed to study what we call implicit trust dimensions, which are cultural, social, and religious attitudes, as well as cognitive and affective factors influencing one's news consumption. One of the objectives of the first phase of our project is to identify the implicit trust dimensions in need of fostering if we are to combat healthcare-related misinformation disseminated on social media platforms. if we can build trust with our community partners, if they trust our product, our research objectives, and the ways in which we have reached out to them for a partnership, then with their participation, we can scale up and we can start studying social media use in first probably on national scale and then maybe even on the global scale. But as you know, there have been many engineering and social solutions to spread this disinformation, and you look around, quite certain that you'll agree with me that they are not exactly working. Our unique angle on this is that we would like to put public service technologies into the hands of our community partners. That's how one writes this up in a grant proposal. Do you see the ethical problem here, just even by putting the matter in this way? Community engagement is not simply about working within a community or working for the benefit of a community. It means that we, academics, let go of some of the sense of superiority that sometimes attaches to how we see ourselves in relation to the community. To engage with the community requires that we are mindful of our assumptions about what is needed in our communities, and that the actual needs in a community may be vastly different from what we imagine to be a need. There are plenty of examples of high-tech medical equipment. I don't have the time to give you all of the details, but tons and tons of medical equipment has been designed and produced, and those now sit unused precisely for this reason. So in our case, we have to be really, really mindful of this question. In our case, the question presents itself as in an unusually acute way. How does one create trust in technology by using technological means? A true partnership with the community, one which allows them the space, the sphere of agency to actively collaborate, must be mindful of all of the ways one might construe human subjects or the users of one's engineering products, and indeed just this term, community partners. It seems hardly possible not to conceive them as passive recipients of the benefits of our research. But can we mitigate this? Can we move the scale in the right direction? Can we engage them as equal partners in our research? And I'd be very, very happy to continue this conversation in the breakout rooms. I'll just stop here for now. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about our project and about the principles behind our research.
Thank you, Krista. I can tell you, we are so excited about this collaboration that you have developed with the engineering faculty. It's quite interesting, the work that your group is doing. Hopefully, you will find some collaborators on Flint campus also, and can build on that. We want to move to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Toko Oshio. She's an assistant professor of education at University of Michigan Flint School of Education and Human Services. Toko, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Toko Oshio. I'm in education at the University of Michigan Flint. Thank you for this opportunity to present a project. It's called PEP. And then also, I'm just speechless right now because the organizers know exactly, because Krista, your presentation, it's really, really similar way to approach community engagement to PEP that I'm doing. So I'm just amazed how organizers, put together and organize, sequencing. Anyway, I'm sorry, I will stop talking and then share my screen. So it's called PEP. It's a catchy name. It's an acronym of the Provider Empowerment Program. So I wanted to give you some history about PEP. So the PEP started, yes, thank you. So the PEP started 2018 to support child care providers in Flint, where we experienced and still experiencing a water crisis. It started as a service grant to support childcare providers. So this program started as a provider mentor program. And when I took over, I redesigned because I quickly learned that I know nothing about how much difficulty childcare providers are facing in the community of Flint. So like Krista said, you know, we sometimes need to let that go of this academics. Like we know the way, we know the best way to support the people in the community. And in order to do that, we applied a human-centered design, which helps us understand the perspective of the people in the community who are actually having the issues and difficulties. And it helps to build the trust, and it helps make local connection and allow us to discover the particular needs of childcare providers in Flint. So utilizing human-centered design help us to discover the problem behind the problem. So that surface, the problem is, yes, childcare providers need support because of this water crisis, and children are most vulnerable, and they need to get support, all of that. However, once you get into this discovery phase, we start seeing the even more issues and then problems. So that's we call the problem behind the problem. I wanted to share a lot of stuff we do. So like I said, we started 2018, and this is a truly collaboration, not just us, our team, PEP team, but the people in the community, especially childcare providers, and also school district and childcare network who supports even before us, those childcare providers in Flint. So I'm sorry, I am trying to put my next. So I could talk about all the things we do, but instead I wanted to share some of the things we do because it's a lot. So we do actively work with the people. We actively work with childcare providers in Flint. We send a text 3 times a week. Text is the best way to communicate with those childcare providers because they're so busy. We also have a Facebook. So this website, pepflint.org, that really capture everything what we do. And then also, I am the lead of the research cluster in social justice, racial, economic, and environmental justice. And then this page will lead you to what we are doing in this research cluster. There are so many amazing faculty who are really engaged in the community, and this page highlights some of the stuff we do. The third one, actually Sally and you all, they're so smart to put those videos because this video made by Michigan Research to capture one of the things we do, the PEP. Their video is way better than I talk. So if you're interested in more what they do, please look at the research, Michigan Research website. There's a video on the YouTube. And also this PEP led us to so many different ways. So like I said, it started as a service grant, but now it's a whole, like really become my research agenda. One of the things is a policy, because policy is not helping the people who need the most support in Flint, especially among childcare providers. So we work with Poverty Solution in Ann Arbor, and we put the policy brief regarding childcare providers. So I just put the link. So if you're interested in, please take a look. And also if you're interested in this human-centered design who allow us to engage in the community in a more authentic and humble and meaningful way, please come talk to me in it's not a chat room, the breakout session. So thank you.
Thank you, Toko. That was quite interesting. I'm sure you will find some, possible collaborators as you discussed some of your ideas in our breakout rooms. Our next presenter is Carmel Price. Carmel is an associate professor of sociology, and she's also affiliated faculty of the Center for Arab American Studies and the Women and Gender Studies programs at University of Michigan Dearborn. Carmel, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Armin. I, like everyone else, is super excited to hear all these presentations and can really see the synthesis and the energy between them all. I am going to walk you through a project called ERA, Environmental Health Research to Action. It is a project that I do in collaboration with Natalie Sampson, who I believe is also in the room. There's a link to our website that I'm going to walk you through. Natalie Sampson is an associate professor of public health on the Dearborn campus. And we started this project, we co-founded it in collaboration with community members who are also co-founders of ERA. ERA has a steering committee that guides our work. Residents and stakeholders of the Dearborn community that we're working in, and they really guide and shape all of the work that we do. This project wouldn't exist without them. ERA also has a video that you can watch. It's 3 minutes long, so it eats up too much of the presentation time. I'm not going to show it. But I will show you a lot of other things. So this project is really centered on environmental justice issues that are happening in Dearborn. And just to give some context to that, here is a Google Maps slide where you can see, let's see if I zoom in here. So there's Dearborn sausage, if anybody eats that. And here's Salina Elementary and Salina Intermediate Schools. And this lovely Yemeni neighborhood located back behind these schools. And then you can see the industry. So this is AK Still that's now owned by Cleveland Cliffs. There's Cleveland Cliffs. This is the Ford Rouge complex. You can come over here and see some additional industries, some Detroit Iron and Metal, some industries up here. Come down here, here's Marathon. Marathon, this is actually on the other side of the Rouge is Detroit. This is Marathon Petroleum. And so you can just see that essentially this is a community that's surrounded by industry that's heavily concentrated. Here's another image that I think is really powerful. You can see Salina Intermediate School right here. Salina's Intermediate School's playground. This is Salina Elementary playground. And they're really neighborhood schools. And these are the neighborhoods and the parks of the families that their children attend these schools. And you can just go around, turn here, and you can see the industry that is creating, that has caused Dearborn to be a non-attainment for sulfur dioxide since 2013 and non-attainment for ozone since 2018. Those are two criteria, air pollutants under the Clean Air Act. And Dearborn has higher particulate matter, 2.5 than 98% of the state of Michigan. So you can see we're really dealing with an environmental justice issue. And so one of the things that ERA does is we run a high school summer academy. And it's really focused on community science and air pollution and environmental justice 101 and policy advocacy. So we're running it again this year, this summer. And I'm just gonna, here's the curriculum that we're looking at for this summer. We do Introduction to Environmental Health and Justice, Air Pollution 101. We're actually adding water to the curriculum this year because the community residents in our steering committee are asking for water. We do community science, some sometimes called citizen science, where we're using handheld air monitors, and this year, some handheld water monitors that we're working on. We do some stuff with data and mapping, policy advocacy, some power mapping, and a lot of storytelling, which we're seeing as kind of a theme coming up in a lot of the projects today. So we're doing some storytelling, and we're really encouraging youth to lift up their voice and tell their stories. We do pay a stipend to our youth for participating in this program because we are focused on fence line youth that live in fence line communities. We also pay a stipend to our steering committee members for their time. And then once youth graduate from the program, then we encourage presentations, and we help organize and set those up. So here you can see a picture of ERA youth that gave a presentation to Dana Nessel, Michigan's Attorney General and Solicitor General. Here, ERA gave a presentation to Debbie Dingle. We've also given presentations to City Council and public schools and the like. Dearborn, ERA also has a plain language project where in essence, we're really working with industry and Eagle to try to make the permitting process accessible and friendly to the community residents that are experiencing all the pollution. So here, like you can see, here's an original public notice. It's really dense and hard to read. And then once we've gone through kind of our plain language research project, then on the other side of it with focus groups and involvement from community and lots of back and forth with Eagle, then here's our sample recommendation for improving that public hearing notice. And it's really exciting that we see things like Eagle's actually implementing some of the changes that we've been recommending. So there's just, the ERA is huge. There's a lot happening. We do a lot. I think my 5 minutes is up, so I'm going to stop here. I could talk about ERA all day long. It's definitely a project of deep passion and deeply embedded in the community. So I look forward to chatting with you all more.
Thank you, Carmel. As I mentioned earlier, this presentations are really wonderful. Helps us really understand as to what our faculty is working on and the wonderful job that they're doing. We'll move on to our next presenter, and our next presenter is Pamela Arenson. Pam is a professor of sociology in a College of Arts, Science, and Letters. Among other things, her research has examined how social structures, including gender, race, and class inequalities, and collapsing economic institutions impact identities in the life course. Pam, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thanks for organizing this event too. This is really, really interesting. So I took a little bit of a different approach than the previous presenters in that I kind of want to give you an overview of a number of research projects, all of which are in various stages at the moment, because I have several research areas, and I just sort of thought that might be good to, have folks understand what kind of stuff I'm doing and, what potential areas of collaboration I can offer. So I'm not going to give you a deep dive into one project, but kind of give you a more broad overview of a few projects. So as Armin mentioned, I'm a sociologist. I also am affiliated with Women and Gender Studies and the Institute for Research on Women and Gender in Ann Arbor. And my research focuses very much on social structures, inequalities, and how those impact individual people. So in the past, I've studied disadvantaged college students, the transition to adulthood, career development, the gendered experiences of work and family, attitudes towards feminism. And so what I want to do is share three primary research areas that I'm working on right now. And I kind of have a lot of balls in the air. So this might seem scattered, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. And also, I just have a lot of research interests. So I'm going to share my screen and start with my first, oops, nope, I didn't click share. See it? Can you see it? Thumbs up? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So my first area is gender inequality, social movement, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. And In this line of research, I'm wrapping up a book, which is titled Gender Revolution, How Politics and Me Too Are Reshaping Everyday Life. I should say wrapping up, meaning in the book kind of way, that will probably be finished over the summer. This project focuses on gender and electoral politics, as well as gender at the interpersonal level in people's everyday lives. On a related topic, I'm working on a collaborative project with a multidisciplinary team that examines sexual harassment in the higher education workplace. And I think there are a few folks from the team, 2 folks at least that I saw for sure. Maureen Linker in philosophy is here. I saw Lisa Martin, who's in public health and women and gender studies. And we also have as collaborators Francine Banner, who's in legal studies and sociology, and Jean Carlos Lopez, who's in health and human services and specializes in counseling. Just real quick, what I can say about these studies is both of them are very multi-method. So they both focus on focus group interviews. Study B has a survey, and study A has a content analysis of media and social media. So I'm very much a multi-method researcher. So I will turn to my second research area right now, which is disadvantaged college students. And I'm conducting a study called Breaking Barriers or Locked Out, How Disadvantaged Students Experience College. And this project has considered the experiences of low-income students, disadvantaged women college students, Middle Eastern students, and immigrant students, non-traditionally aged college students as well. So this study is longitudinal and is based on in-depth interviews with 100 students, actually on the Dearborn campus. And I also followed those participants over a 6 to 8 year period via their academic transcripts, which they gave me permission to do. And so I've been especially interested in outcomes in this study. So in particular, the factors that enable some at-risk students to complete their degrees while others drop out. So I'm very interested in education, and this is sort of how I've moved into that area. So my third area is the transition to adulthood. And I have some memes up here that were from a project, a paper that I recently published in a journal called Emerging Adulthood. And I've been especially interested in the gendered transition to adulthood, although this particular paper does not focus on that. So I've become very recently engaged in understanding the transition to adulthood during the pandemic. So I did some comparative work with a couple of collaborators at other institutions very early in the pandemic, and we were looking at how cross-cultural, particularly national policies, differently impact the level of institutional and governmental support that young people have. And so I've sort of become very passionate about this area because I feel that the pandemic has really impacted young adults in ways that we haven't yet realized. And I think there will be some long-term implications of that I'm interested in looking at in the future. These memes come from an article that I published with a recent graduate of ours that was looking at pandemic humor in the Facebook group called Zoom Memes for Self-Quarantines. And in that paper, we found that young people are expressing both generational identity and also generational conflict through their social media humor. So I also have a long-term, I'll just click to the next slide so you don't get sidetracked by the fun memes here, or not so fun memes. You got the explosion in the background of the one. I also have a long-term association with the Youth Development Study, which is a longitudinal intergenerational study that was originally based at the University of Minnesota. And most recently, this study surveyed the third generation of young people. And there's a possibility of comparing those who responded both before and after the pandemic first hit. So this project actually began in the late 1980s and has been following the same cohort of people all of this time, and also did some surveys of their parents and now their children. So it's really an incredible, incredible project. And it's actually recently became public data set, as the PI has recently retired. Most of it's public, not all of it, although I have access to the other pieces. So just very quickly, methodologically, my work is based on both in-depth qualitative interviews, focus groups, content analysis. I do have quite a bit of experience in survey construction, but I'm not a statistician. I can do some basic statistical analyses, but that's about it. It sounds like most of this group is not going in that direction anyway. But in terms of collaboration possibilities, I'd be excited in thinking about working with folks on any of these general topics, whether that's collecting new data or working together on some existing and underutilized data.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you for that presentation. I think we have our last presentation, and it's a team presentation. So we have Melissa Streckovic and Christine Keaney. Both are associate professors of education from University of Michigan, Flint. And they're gonna talk about their, collaborative work, I assume. And Melissa, Christine, you have the floor.
Thank you. We are so excited to be here today. We've been really looking forward to this all week, and we've already learned a great deal. So we just want to preface this by saying that we were given the okay to present 6 slides in 10 minutes. We don't want any potential collaborators to think that we are these wild rule breakers. So we just wanted to put that out there. Christine and I are excited to talk about a relatively new project. We just started this about 10 months ago, really looking at the intersection of autism and law enforcement and how to increase the safety of those interactions. So when Pamela was talking about the transition to adulthood, that's really what got Christine and I interested in this work, is that the young children that we used to teach as classroom teachers with autism have now transitioned to adulthood. And they are engaging in society much more independently than they ever had before. And so their risk for coming in contact with law enforcement has increased. And so that's really kind of what ignited our interest in getting moving on this work. And when we talk about individuals with autism today, we use both person first and identity first language, just because the participants that we have had the great opportunity to work with, some prefer person first and some prefer identity first. So Christine and I both share one common line of research, which is looking at systems and practices that support the authentic inclusion of individuals with disabilities in both schools and in community settings. So what we mean by authentic inclusion is really looking beyond typical ways of becoming a valued member of your school and community, and recognizing that everybody has something valuable to contribute to their school and to their community. So we're looking at ways that we can remove barriers, increase access, and really foster this authentic sense of belonging. So our most recent project in line with this research domain is looking at the intersection of autism and law enforcement, and more specifically, identifying ways to increase the safety of autistic individuals and law enforcement officers during those safety encounters. So to address this, we developed an autism training for law enforcement officers and provided the training to examine the social validity of it from the perspective of law enforcement officers. So just to give you a little bit of background information on why this work is so timely and needed. What we know about autism is that 1 in 44 individuals 8 years of age in the US has autism. And what we know about the intersection of autism and law enforcement is that 1 in 5 autistic individuals report coming in contact with law enforcement by their mid-20s, which is a relatively high rate of contact. We know that autistic behaviors are often misinterpreted by law enforcement officers as being defiant, threatening, or as someone who's intoxicated or on narcotics. And because of this misinterpretation, a lot of these interactions have ended up in unnecessary restraint, arrest, and sometimes death. So We know that most of the interactions between law enforcement officers and individuals on the spectrum are not criminally related. About 75 to 80% of those calls are related to either elopement and wandering, crisis calls, or suspicious person calls. So elopement and wandering is when the autistic individuals wanders from their caregiver or their teacher. So you can see up here on the top, those headlines, those were all missing person reports just this fall from Michigan. They're definitely not exhaustive. They're just examples. 2 of those missing person reports ended up resulting in death. Crisis call is when a family or a caregiver or a teacher calls the police for support in challenging behaviors when the autistic individual is engaging typically in a meltdown. So in the top right picture is a picture of Eric Parsa. He was a 16-year-old boy from Louisiana. In 2020, he died after a law enforcement officer laid on him during restraint. Eric was engaging in pretty serious injurious behaviors to his father, and that's why the police were called. And then the suspicious person call is when a reporting person calls dispatch and says that they see some sort of unusual behavior. And this is what happened in that bottom picture. Reporting person called the police and Rajon Cherry. They said that he was holding or that he was walking in traffic and hitting himself in the head. When the police arrived, he had a metal object in his hand, which turned out to be a spoon. He's a nonverbal 21-year-old man, and he was unable to comply with law enforcement commands, and he ended up being tased several times. So these are just examples of why we provided the training to officers. We really want to teach about these autistic behaviors to help officers identify what the behaviors are and to provide strategies to help increase the safety of those interactions.
So now I'm going to take over. Hello, everyone. I'm Christine. It's wonderful to be here with you. Here you can see the steps in our current study. After receiving a research and creative activity internal grant from the University of Michigan-Flint, thank you very much, we began the project in June of 2021. Melissa and I connected with an expert in the intersection between autism and law enforcement named Dennis DeBoat. Dennis is a former private investigator and has an autistic son, and he's been working in this area of work for over 40 years. We attended several train the trainer sessions with Mr. DeBoat, and drawing on the information we learned at the train the trainer, coupled with our expertise in autism and adult learning strategies, we developed the materials for the training, which include a 4-hour face-to-face professional development session utilizing didactic instruction, video examples, role play, and participant discussion. We sought feedback on our materials from an autistic individual who has been involved in the criminal justice system. We then piloted the training with the University of Michigan-Flint Department of Public Safety and sought feedback from both the chief and a lieutenant. So using all of this feedback, we made tweaks and then entered the implementation phase. Currently, we have provided training to 26 first responders and law enforcement officers and collected open-ended survey data regarding the social validity of the training. For example, the format of the training, teaching methods, content covered, feasibility of the strategies. Preliminary results indicate that attendees feel the training is socially important, so we're really excited about that. The strategies are reasonable and the procedures feasible for implementation in the field. In addition to training in the, Melissa, do you want to go to the next slide? Thank you. In addition to training law enforcement officers and first responders for interactions with individuals on the spectrum, this project has really started us thinking about how we can better support autistic individuals for encounters with law enforcement officers and also educate their families on ways to prevent elopement and wandering. So we've teamed up with the University of Michigan-Flint Department of Public Safety, and we're holding an Autism Awareness event in April called Officer Friendly Day. At this event, autistic individuals and their families in both our UM-Flint community and the greater county area can engage with officers and become more comfortable with the sights and sounds of their vehicles before an emergency occurs. It will also give police officers the opportunity to engage with autistic individuals, which will enable them to better see the signs of autism when they are in the field and become more comfortable engaging with individuals on the spectrum during a safety call. We hope this is the first of many events like this to come, and we would love to see more events like this across our 3 campuses. So we would be happy to collaborate on these endeavors to create more inclusive spaces for our community members. So in terms of future directions and potential collaborations, we just submitted a grant proposal to the to the Organization of Autism Research to examine the social validity of the training from the perspective of the autistic individuals who are diverse in terms of race, gender, and sexual identity. We are interested in better understanding how the training represents the multiple identities of individuals with autism. We are also interested in examining the efficacy of the training to increase officer knowledge of autism and confidence in using strategies. So we will be examining the impact of the training in the field and how the strategies and knowledge learned during the training transfer to the field with the ultimate goal of safer outcomes, obviously. Another future direction is better understanding the lived experiences of individuals on the spectrum who were involved in a public safety encounter or in the criminal justice process, as well as the perspective of their family members, caregivers, and educators who call law enforcement or first responders for support regarding the safety or behavior of autistic individuals. And after hearing all of the lightning talks today, I think this aspect falls nicely in line with many of the other presentations focusing on storytelling. And finally, we are interested in collaborating on community events that promote autism awareness. We would like to investigate the impact such events have on overall perspective of autism and engagement with autistic individuals. And while we focus on autism in this project, Melissa and I are champions for equity and social justice for all individuals with disabilities. So we're interested in collaborative work in those with other disabilities as well. Thank you very much. And here's our contact information if you want to talk more.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Melissa. That's quite interesting. I think we are, this concludes the presentation portion of